Welcome everyone to the Interoperability Roundtable. This is an open forum fostering conversations around interoperability. My name is David Finney. I am pinch hitting for my colleague Jake Tunney, who's our usual MC and is happily in Hawaii on his honeymoon this week. So I'm sure his brain is far away from the Interoperability Roundtable. I am joined with my co-host and co-founder and partner of Leap Orbit, Mrinal Bhasker. Leap Orbit, for those of you who don't know, is the trusted innovation partner to many of the biggest market-leading health data networks, including CRISP, Manifest MedX, and SyncHealth, as well as the policymakers who oversee them. We are currently working on improving the accuracy and accessibility of provider data with our Convergent product. Convergent assists health plans to comply with the CMS interoperability rule, and there's free access to anyone who would like to try our provider APIs at leaporbit.com/private-beta, which I'll drop into the chat. We are joined here today with our friend, Tim Kulp. Tim, I do not normally do this, but I'm feeling inspired to read your bio because it's such a cool bio.
Thank you.
Tim's the Chief Innovation Officer of Mind Over Machines, just up the road here in Maryland. And Tim is trying to change the world. Tim's mission is to stop the automation apocalypse by empowering humans. With years on the front lines of automation, Tim leads workers and business leaders to realize the potential of a human plus machine future instead of a human versus machine future. That's awesome. As a writer, I'm jazzed. And there's no better person to talk about this topic of interoperability in health, automation in healthcare. Tim also holds a BA in religious studies from McDaniel College, an MS in applied information technology from Towson University, and a post-bac certificate in information security also from Towson. Tim has spoken and taught in many interesting institutions and prestigious venues around the country. So we're really delighted to have you here, Tim.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, let's jump right into it. Mrinal, maybe I'll turn it over to you to start the discussion/interrogation. I'll kind of tee it off though by saying automation and business process automation has become very quickly an important part of what we do. As we've gotten into the provider data space, which by nature is big data space, and it's data aggregation and web crawling and chasing provider data in all the places where it lives in the four corners of the earth. And to do that at scale, we're very quickly becoming automation, not experts, but students.
Thank you, David. And for folks who have joined us before, we have gone through a whole, roster of folks that we have talked to, from business leaders to technology leaders to other folks. And we have kept talking about how much is there to do in healthcare to drive costs down, to improve efficacy and outcomes, and automation is going to be an extremely important component of that journey in bending the cost curve so healthcare doesn't become the dominating expense line item in our country's GDP, but also to, as Tim writes in his bio, to empower humans to do better, to be more productive and to do things that humans actually enjoy doing and are not good at, and not doing things that they're not good at. And so with that in mind, when I talked to Tim a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about different things, and it just came to me that with focus on robotic process automation, which is a term, or RPA, that is one of the buzzwords in the market right now that everybody talks about, and hardly few of us know really what it is. And so Tim told me that, they're really kind of leading the charge with their customers on helping them adopt RPA technologies. And I said, oh my God, that's so pertinent to the things that we are talking about. Why not we just focus on RPA in this conversation? So without much ado here, I'll ask you, Tim, what is RPA and how is it different from traditional automation that we have done for years?
Yeah, so thank you. And RPA is a huge technology topic. It's like talking about CRM. There's so much out there that's happening around it. But fundamentally, when we talk about robotic process automation, we're really talking about teaching a computer how to use a computer like a human. So click here, type text in there, copy paste data like this, make these decisions of whether or not you should click that button. A lot of times people lump RPA into an AI technology, and it is training a computer how to work with a computer, because you do train it by saying, okay, this is how to perform this business process. But what's different is it's recording what you're doing and say, okay, here is click this button, then type in this, then click this button, type in this. Here's the decision logic to go through. It's not like creating big training sets of data and then processing tons of data. It really is about deep process knowledge and training the computer how to act like a human to perform this process.
No, that's great to learn. How do you go from saying, hey computer, do this, and I've run into this with other earlier incarnations of the same thing. I think RPA is a little buzzy that way. One of the things you run into is like, you pick a web page and say, hey, click here. Guess what? That button or whatever can move around, right? So there's sort of a coordinate, like where does it exist on the page, but also like tagging or metadata that sits behind it, and to catch it right. And the earlier, in sort of earlier incarnations of this technology, I felt that it was very fragile or brittle, and it broke a lot. And I mostly used it for test automation before. So I think one thing that is happening is it's coming to the fore in mainstream automation as opposed to just test automation. So that's one thing that I clearly see. But has the technology really evolved to be less brittle and more sure-footed, if you will?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And when it comes to RPA, marketing material aside from all the various vendors out there, we see it in automation as you go to RPA when you don't have APIs that you can access, when you don't have direct access to the database system, or a really common thing, and for those who are software development background people have probably heard this, when somebody says, I just want it to work how the old system worked. And that's like when you're asking them about requirements and they're like, just make it work like the old system. And everybody's like, how does the old system work? Like, we don't know what the logic that drives all these things. So if you have APIs, use the APIs to move around the data. If you have access to the database, use ETL operations to move around the data. If you don't have any of that, and all you have is the interface on your desktop, you have Cerner running through Citrix, that's all you got. You can't access anything more. RPA is a really valuable tool. Now, the brittleness of RPA is a factor. It absolutely is a factor. Where the market has grown, and you see leaders like UiPath and Microsoft, who are partners with Mind Over Machines. We are big fans of their products and offerings. They have lots of different ways to handle the brittleness. So it's not just coordinates, it's mapping to the DOM of a web page to say, here's the ID to look for in the DOM. Now, of course, that means the web page was built semantically and properly. And so where RPA is really lighting up and advancing is not just like how RPA has always worked, but it's actually the advancement of the best practices in building software, in building web applications that use semantic context so that you can say, this is the ID I'm working with, or here is the address to the ID I want to be working with. Those are referred to as selectors. But also the ability to tie into the APIs as well. And this is an area where people break down, is they think about RPA as let the computer just do it and do it like the human does it. It's like, yes, but don't forget it's a computer. It can talk to APIs simultaneously as it is typing and entering in this data. So, it really is a technology that does have some brittleness, but because of advancements in semantic web, in how Windows and Mac OS are creating addresses in their applications, it's getting a lot stronger as a platform.
That's good to hear. Note to self and to other developers, build your applications for testability, or in this case, automation ability.
Yeah, and to add to that, absolutely. When we think about, there's a great book on my bookshelf back here, is What to Do When Machines Do Everything. Phenomenally good book, highly recommended. One of the things they talk about in there is the workforce will be measured on how well it works with AI and automation systems.
Yeah.
Developers, we will be measured, us technical people will be measured as to how well our solutions play with automated systems. That's not going to be a extra benefit. That's going to be an expectation in the future.
Tim, I have a question though, or a little bit of a contrarian view on this. I mean, isn't it also true that in some situations the software developers are looking to foil RPA? And I'll give you an example, right? So we're in the business of harvesting healthcare provider data from all the places where we can find it. And you may go to the state of Idaho Board of Physicians, and they have a licensure file, and it's a really kludgy set of clicks, and we can automate the process of going and grabbing that file once a day or once a week or once a month, whatever. However, like maybe we want to crawl Google, or maybe we want to harvest data from Yelp. There are business model risks to the folks that are sitting on the other side of that transaction. And presumably they want to make it hard because they'd like us to pay to use their APIs or pay to have access to their data sets, right? So do you see that sort of black hat, white hat thing going on? And are you guys asked to play on both sides of that equation?
Yeah, so very critical, read the end user license agreement on any
Sure. Yeah.
you're going to be working
I'm
with.
not a lawyer, so.
So, and it's funny because when I ask people like, well, can we use RPA on this application? And I just get blank stares like, well, yeah, of course we can. I'm like, wait, are you sure? Like, did you check the documentation and see if this is explicitly called out? Because sometimes it is.
Right.
Now, one thing I would say is building your applications for automation doesn't necessarily mean you built for RPA. Building for automation could be you created the APIs for people to hook into and access. Building for automation could be that you have a gate and the human has to pass that gate, and then the process can go forward from there. Again, a lot of times, just like I was saying earlier, we need to make sure we don't lose sight of a computer can think like a computer. We shouldn't try to make the human obsolete. Like, quite the opposite. The human has huge value in business processes. Our opportunity in business is to say, what is that, right? So if it's processing claims, healthcare claims, what is the human value in processing the healthcare claim? And if you really get stuck and say, man, I don't think there is any human value in this, right there is a great opportunity for market disruption. So as you think about innovation and say, well, what could we have humans doing here that is different than our competitors, that is different than how the market does business as usual? So building for automation can be providing your APIs, can be providing maybe data access if you jump through the right hoops. I'm not advocating that we make things just totally open for everyone. Absolutely not. You got to have your business model. Without your business model, you're not going to have data for anybody to work with or applications. So really thinking about how does my tool fit into this automation ecosystem, and we're seeing that's the rise of the platforms. That's what's making them successful. They can snap into all these different things. So that would be my encouragement to people.
Fair enough. And obviously the business model and sort of contractual considerations are important. I mean, I think the other thing is sort of performance and resiliency of applications, right? I mean, it's one thing to build a web application that's available to humans and the speed at which humans can navigate it. But then when you've automated that process, you could have a robot hitting that application, thousands and thousands of times over and over again. And that opens a whole set of different questions about how you architect your solutions, right?
Absolutely. And that's also a place where what we're going to have, and this is RPA, chatbots. The IEEE has a standard, the 7000 series of standards, which is the ethical implementation of AI. And one of the key ethical aspects of AI is you have to communicate that a human is interacting with an AI system. And what does that mean? What is that about? When we are building out our software systems, we need to make sure that people understand, we have built it to be used like this, not like this. And so if you use it like this, you're not going to have the same SLAs and experiences that you do if you follow the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim, in your starting answer, you buried something quickly in there that I wanted to highlight. And you said the RPA systems, because they're computer-based systems, they have the ability to interlace sort of human-esque workflow with computer, API calls and database calls and other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
That just makes it very unique, where you can have things working like human, but also working like a computer, and thereby bringing in some sort of new kind of possibilities in the mix that was not possible if you were making a human do all of that work, and maybe even faster.
Yeah.
So, and answer me something. One thing I'm sort of beginning to think about is if you have RPA, is RPA a stopgap? and this may be provocative, but is this a stopgap before all computers and all user interfaces are API enabled, that it's just a stopgap, or this need will always exist?
This is a very good question. I believe that we will always have a place for RPA-esque tools. It might look different as we think about spatial computing and metaverse and augmented reality systems. RPA starts looking real different, in how these kind of interactions occur.
Yeah.
That said, we think about starting up in the morning. Here's a great example. I don't know about you guys, but I have like my morning ritual of I go to my computer, I open my email, I turn on my music. I have a specific playlist for like getting like going in the morning, start that playlist, open up my to-do list tasks. All that can be RPA, to use RPA as a verb. But you know, RPA can just do that. Now, there's not really an API that, I mean, I guess I could go build something to pull all that together, but from a simplistic, I open this every morning, so I just hit go on my computer, and my computer is set up for me to get started. This is a RPA use case that I don't see going away. It might be built into Mac OS, Windows 10, you know, as you go forward, which kind of is with what's happening with Power Automate Desktop. You know, it's now built into Windows 10. So, you know, I do think RPA is going to stick around. It is an excellent use case to use RPA as a transition system. So one of the things that we've seen is client moving from ERP X to ERP Y. Well, you might have double entry time period. For anybody who's moved ERPs, you know that can be a scenario. Or you can use your RPA system. You just enter it into one system and it copies the data to the next system if there are no APIs available. Or there are APIs available and it's just using copy and paste. Because remember, in that scenario, both systems would have to have APIs available. So a little bit of a stopgap is actually a good use case for RPA, but I do think we'll always have a scenario for tools like RPA.
And does this also, and you started talking metaverse, so you you went over my head there, but does this bleed over into the physical world? You know, like I already do some automation with where it has physical world interfaces or consequences with Alexa, right? I mean, I say good night to Alexa and it locks my front door and it, you know, makes sure that my garage door is closed and those kind of things. So is there sort of bleed over into the physical?
Yeah, absolutely. As you think about, and this, I'm gonna switch into a manufacturing use case, but you know, I think you can see parallels in healthcare, and I'm going to this manufacturing use case because this is a real use case, where you have a machine running and it's using Internet of Things to detect the vibration of the fan running on the assembly line. When that vibration gets outside of its realm to go, the system will notify the robot, in this case, the RPA robot, and say, I need a new part ordered. Can you go order my new part? Now, I hear a lot of people that say, oh, from a technology perspective, we're so far behind manufacturing. I hear that in healthcare. We're behind manufacturing. I hear in manufacturing, we're so far behind healthcare. Right? Everybody thinks they're behind everyone else. The reality is everybody's just on this journey together. But the key thing is looking across industries to say, what is manufacturing doing over here? Because that machine triggering the robot to say, go order another part, well, it's ordering a part in a system that you can't interact with. So now let's translate that into a healthcare scenario where you could have an event happening at a nursing station that is going to kick off a robot to go interact with, you know, Cerner or whatever your EHR system of choice is to create some workflow to start happening. So absolutely. And again, if APIs are available, great. But in a lot of systems, APIs aren't available, or it's cost prohibitive to buy that API layer of access.
Yeah, there's definitely the aspect of not either having the time or the resources to you know, build the APIs or build the new infrastructure that will replace the current. And so there's this concept of, hey, you don't have to, that you could use. We have the tools now that even if your system is still stuck in a user interface world, which again is provocative, but if it is stuck there and it can't, you know, get you access, as you know, in a service-oriented architecture, access to everything, that you can work with in an API fashion, that guess what, there's RPA to rescue.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
and this is where a fascinating move in RPA and low code kind of development is this focus on citizen developer, where when you really think about what is citizen developer really doing? So for those who don't know, a citizen developer is somebody who's outside of IT that is building traditionally IT solutions.
Yeah.
So building an app, building a workflow, doing these kind of things using software tools approved by IT. That's where the shadow IT stops. It was approved by IT to do these things.
Yeah.
So RPA, in the vendors are really focusing on this citizen developer aspect so that anyone in the organization can build and record their workflows so that they can move innovation out of IT, where IT is innovating bigger problems, bigger challenges. And now individual workers can say, I'm going to own the solution for my problem. And here we go. I'm going to do this. Now, with that said, asterisk on this of there's a governance framework that has to be set up and all this good stuff. But RPA enables these citizen developers to start innovating at the edge of business instead of waiting for innovation to trickle out from the core.
I think it's interesting. I mean, it starts to change what the role of IT really is. I think especially in large organizations. I mean, you go to any hospital or health system, and I think where you hear the most pain from frontline workers in terms of their relationship with IT is when we're talking about business process, right? Like nobody likes it when you do an Epic implementation and the Epic people and IT tell you, well, this is the way you're going to have to do your job now, right? And you got to change everything, right? Your cheese has been moved to another continent. And I think what you're alluding to is IT starting to truly be in sort of the tool and platform business and not in the prescriptive business process business.
Yeah, this is where two challenges are manifesting there. One, IT's role really is getting into we need to make sure we're protecting the business and we need to make sure that we're enabling the business. But your IT experts probably aren't the experts in how to do business. They're experts in IT systems. And so as you want to enable the experts in these ideas of how do we do business, enable them to say, this is the best way to do business. And the system of, well, I have an idea, I'll put in a ticket, the ticket will get queued, then it gets debated who's going to do the ticket, and then it might have to get approval from like a budgeting capital committee. Well, here's a tool, you can just build your own solution, go ahead. And if you're implementing a good center of excellence framework, a COE framework, that solution that Susie built or that Bob built, that solution can be shared throughout the company. So IT's role really is enabling the business and come out and be able to say, okay, the answer is not always no. And that's where information security and IT kind of get a bad rap as being the departments of no. This citizen developer frameworks can enable the business more and let IT focus on the bigger issues that really, really need their time.
Well, we have a comment that I think speaks to this. This person is talking about systems like Smartsheet, where citizens, non-technical people like me, can really take off and run with forms and other types of business process automation. And I think one of the things that's sort of goes without saying in this discussion, and it has to do with the cloud and the platforms that have been established in the cloud, is that the tools that are available to sort of the citizen developers are so much more powerful than they were even 10 years ago. I mean, the days when the sort of doctor entrepreneur, the doctor innovator builds something really cool with an access database or VB script or something, and then says, well, let's roll this out to the enterprise, right? And all the enterprise people are like, yeah, there's no chance. I think we're moving beyond that, right? I mean, these are tools that maybe they're not enterprise grade, but they have the potential to be enterprise grade.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a challenge that every IT department is going to face in the immediate future. Has been facing for a while. It's on overdrive now. Once upon a time, if you wanted to implement a CRM system, that was a big deal. Like you had to go and get approval and all that stuff. Nowadays, a marketing person with a credit card can go and create a HubSpot membership just like that. Like done, got my CRM, I'm putting in my data, here we go. But IT doesn't know all this customer data is going in this system outside of their control. And so you could have GDPR issues, you could have all kinds of privacy issues on that. So the this citizen developer aspect is rich and powerful and allows all kinds of capabilities, but you gotta have the framework in place to be able to answer the questions of when does IT get involved and when do they not get involved. And there was a question in the Q&A here that really kind of is on this topic still. Can you talk about RPA in today's resource constrained market? And so I'm going to answer this in two ways. One way I'm going to answer this is finding RPA talent, not easy. That it's a high demand market. Lots of companies are very interested in RPA, and a lot of companies are gathering up this talent. What at Mind Over Machines, we've seen this as a challenge, and this is where we have looked and are building a curriculum to help grow this talent within organizations and within the community through community colleges, partnerships, things like that. So, we're focused on growing this talent so that the resources are available to implement RPA, implement these integrations as needed. On another area here, when I read that question, there's well, it's a really constrained market. So can RPA help me not hire people? I think that's kind of a subtext, and maybe that was the intent of the question. But here's my answer. If your entire business can just run on RPA, you're not going to be in business long. All right. You've got to have humans who create value in your organization. Now, do you need all the humans that you have today? I don't know. It depends on your business. At Mind Over Machines, we're big advocates of what's called a redeployment of human capital. So you implement an RPA process. That process is going to take X number of hours from a human that you don't need that human doing that work anymore. So what is that human going to do? And we've seen it where the human was processing, and I'll go back to claims. Claim processing is a very common RPA use case. The human's processing claims. This batch of claims are no longer needed to be processed by the human because it's processed by the RPA bot. So that human was focusing on more complex claims and more complex customer service scenarios. So what did that do overall? These claims are handled by the bot. These bigger claims could be compressed in how much time it took to close them, which led to an overall compression of time to revenue out of a claim. So this is not just about, well, we'll make this process faster. It's about we can use RPA to reduce costs, but also increase value and speed up our organization.
Oh, and I think the other thing is, and if you have good employees, we found this is unanimously the case. Like if you take people out of low value, undifferentiated work, and you put them into intellectually stimulating, high value work, they tend to be a lot happier, right? And work becomes a growth opportunity. They're contributing in a way that feels meaningful to the business. All of those things are possible when you get folks out of menial tasks.
Yeah, and evidence of that we see when we're working on automations with teams. The workforce, the worker teams have a laundry list of what they want to automate. Once they see how it works and how it's going to transform their role and enable them, and the management is looking at like, okay, well, wait a minute, let's slow down, everybody. Let's focus on these things. But the workforce is like, let's go. We've got, let's do this. I got these ideas and these ideas. it's very interesting because you expect this level of fear in the workforce. And, and maybe it's just our mind over machines approach, but, when we're working with people, man, there is a high level of excitement and people are ready for this change.
Yeah, as a lifelong technologist, I take it on my chin when somebody says, why can't we deliver value, business value, customer value quicker? And that's been a challenge. I mean, I take it very seriously that the time to value, time to market is not optimal in IT organizations. And it's across the board, but I think in healthcare especially so. And there are some sort of historical reasons for it. We are also more risk averse in healthcare. And so that kind of feeds into that problem set. But you talked about low code. That's a whole different but related area. RPA kind of is a subset of the low code type systems. Can you expand a little bit more on it and educate us on what else is covered under low code and what and how industry is using it, what parts of it are more mainstream now, and how the market is evolving on low code?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll hear it branded as low code, no code. Forget that no code part. That's marketing. So code is the way to think about it. And when I say low code, and people are like, "Oh, I have to learn how to write code," I'm like, wait. Think more like Excel formulas, like just basic Excel formulas. That's really what we're talking about in this low code world. And the idea is that you can build technology solutions through simple like Excel functions, through simple drag and drop interfaces and connecting up workflows. A great example of this is, in a very common example, use case of this is Power BI from Microsoft. I would say this is the most common as we look out and see, people implementing low-code solutions. Business intelligence tools are the #1 use case that we are seeing. Whether that is statistically accurate across the entire world, I don't know, but that's what we're seeing as we're out in the field. And so what is that? So IT provides, here's your data store. We've connected Power BI to your data store. These are all your possible data stores. Then users go in and say, okay, so I'm going to create a report so I can visualize data from these data stores. Now, a critical part is that IT has also formatted that data in the language of the business. So it's not like TBL customers underscore new underscore version 1 underscore final. Like you don't want to have that kind of a naming schema. You would have just customers. This is the customer data set. Yeah. So I want to view a report on customers. I can drag fields from that customer table onto a visualization. And the tool, Power BI, says, oh, do you want to count the customers? Do you want to average the customers? Then you build another field. You pull another field, like maybe from your sales table or your sales object, revenue by customer, or whatever. And here you go, or claims by patient. You pull that in, the visualization updates. What you are enabling the users to do, IT has formatted the data so that it's all in the same language of business. Business goes in and says, okay, here's now how I want to see that. Now, what's good about that is when the business wants to change that report and that visualization, they don't have to call IT. They can just do it. Now, the bad side of that is when they want to change the report, they can just do it. Now, did they tell everyone that they did change the report? There's the problem. So you have to have these governance rules. Low code, citizen developer, RPA citizen developer, you need to have the governance rules. And this is don't try to learn it as you go. That's tough. So have a framework and work from that.
And Tim, I agree about the business intelligence domain being one of the prime places where low code is taking shape right now. I'll give a shout out to a friend's company called ThoughtSpot. They're sort of raising the bar on even that and saying, hey, tell us where your enterprise data is or your customer data is, and we'll just crawl it. We'll create dashboards and reports for you, right? Or allow a query interface, artificially intelligent query interface, where a business user can go in and type in their question, and the answer will appear on the screen along with the graphs and charts that are automatically built. So really interesting and exciting development going on in that marketplace that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is when people say AI taking jobs, AI showing up at work. This is AI showing up at work. Like if you just as simple as going into Excel and you have a table of data in Excel, you might notice the ideas button. And if you push that button, it's going to give you a whole bunch of ideas for table or for charts and graphs and reports out of your data. How do you think that's happening? It's not magic, it's statistical analysis through AI. So these tools show up. Now, the key thing is, how do we know how to use them?
Sure.
How do we know what biases are cooked into them? That is a critical aspect. Anytime we talk about AI, you got to talk about bias. You've got to be thinking about, what creates challenges in your data that's going to lead you astray.
Yeah, completely agree. We are at 12:42. I have a couple of questions left here. David, do we have any more questions from the attendees here?
I don't think so, but they should feel free to drop additional questions either in the chat or the Q&A, and we can tackle them. Okay, so I wanted to pull ourselves back into sort of the healthcare domain because that's where our focus is. So are you seeing in the trenches use of FHIR, which is the dominant standard now in healthcare? And I know there's a lot of legacy still out there, but what kind of use of FHIR are you seeing on the front lines as you do RPA and other things?
Yeah, so this is where a very common use case with RPA and FHIR is to get data from a legacy system into the FHIR system. And so there's huge power in that too. One of the things that people often forget, when a human is typing, they make mistakes. So if they're typing data from here to there, it's called a swivel chair operation. Take the data from here, put it into there. Well, RPA, depending on how it's implemented, is literally working with the variables of take the data from here, literally put the exact same thing where you told me to put it. So it drastically reduces the errors in this data transformation, which improves patient outcomes, it improves your data reliability, and most importantly, improves your trust in the new system, right? Because if your data is accurate and you trust this was taken care of properly, then you're in a good place. That's where we're seeing a lot of RPA focus and mindset is legacy system to integration-based systems.
Okay, that's really good to hear, and that's very unique in the way you're using RPA there. You're not changing, just looking at replacing a human with something else, but really making data move from silos that were not accessible before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were harder.
Well, on that point, I do think, we're kind of, I don't know whether it's the tail end, but we've lived through a decade of sort of manic consolidation in the healthcare world, right? And I think it's easy for folks to forget that when you take sort of a monolithic institution, right? Johns Hopkins, the University of Maryland, it's this big sort of omnipresent names in our market. Like if you kind of look under the cover, these are large institutions that have grown by a merger and consolidation, and they have a technology landscape that reflects that, right? So you can be leading the charge on FHIR, but still be dealing with a decade of legacy systems that somehow you got to make peace with, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where RPA really lights up. I mean, it is, as we were saying earlier, it's your integration of last resort. Like, I don't have APIs, it can't access the data. I need to work with this stuff. So another great scenario, if you have grown through merger and acquisition and you have all kinds of technology platforms, man, the same use case I just gave with, going from legacy system to FHIR, you can use that for any of your systems, going from old HR system to new HR system. One of the things people often forget, they focus so much on their verticals, they forget that they're the horizontals of, like, everybody onboards employees. Right. Everybody is, doing accounts payable. Like, so these processes you really can light up with tools like RPA to integrate your dispersed landscape.
Tim, I was wondering, the real innovators in terms of tools and platforms in this space, are there companies we should be keeping our eyes on as things evolve?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you pick up any Gartner report, you're going to see UiPath in the top right, that they are leading the charge. For UiPath, we are a partner of the Mind Over Machines, a partner. It's not just marketing material. They have a really, really good product. And that's a very strong market leader. Very flexible. Their UiPath's focus is on the enterprise. How do you go, and this is a huge problem in the RPA world, how do I go from pilot to enterprise and actually implement it at the enterprise level? UiPath is really focusing on creating that whole value chain of here's how to collect ideas, here's how to implement the ideas, here's how to measure the ideas, here's how to measure the impact on the business. UiPath is doing good stuff there. We're watching Microsoft very closely because they, about what, a year ago, we're like, yeah, we have an RPA offering now. We're like, what? You look at it and it's like, oh, this is interesting and useful. But man, they have really accelerated what they're doing, and it's a very fascinating product, but it's a very different strategic approach. UiPath is enabling this enterprise landscape, and Microsoft is really focusing on the citizen developer. So Power Automate Desktop is not designed for development teams. It's designed for you to implement an automation, whereas UiPath is designed for a development team to produce automations.
How about Amazon? Are they right behind Microsoft in this area?
So we don't see a lot of questions or energy around Amazon in the RPA space, really. The other two leaders in this area are Automation Anywhere, which is aligning to Google a lot, it looks like, in the marketplace. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a merger there. But Automation Anywhere, if you're a Java shop, if you're very focused on Java, then Automation Anywhere is a great tool for you to use. UiPath is a .NET oriented tool. And then the one that's kind of used to be the really big dog is kind of transformed their role a bit. It's called Blue Prism, also a really good tool. I mean, all of these are really good tools. None of them would steer you wrong, but UiPath is definitely stepping out from the pack, and Microsoft is sprinting up, to catch up. It's pretty fascinating market to watch.
Interesting. Well, similarly, Tim, this has been a fascinating conversation, and it's been really great to talk with you, and we've, I think, learned probably more than we've learned in doing any of these. So hopefully we can have you back as this market continues to evolve. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, and thanks to everybody who attended, and we'll look forward to seeing you at an upcoming Interoperability Roundtable. Happy Friday and have a good weekend. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Great.